Hi, I'm Kevin Keller, the Pragmatic Statistician. In this episode of Street Stats, we're going to talk about using stages in statistical process control, or SPC. We're going to divide this up into two sessions, or stages. Not a good joke. All right. Let's show an example of what I mean by stages. We're going to go to engine room. We actually saw this example in one of my first episodes when we were talking about day one problems versus recent problems. We're going to go back. We're going to look at our on-time shipping data that we had episodes ago, and we're going to look at what happens when our data shifts. So we can go to statistical process control. Where is it? There it is. And we're going to put in our data which shifted, and we're going to put in a time variable. And then I had gone ahead and put in a phase shift so you can just see conceptually what we're talking about. We were running along, we were about 90%, something happened, and then now we're running about 85%, and you can have two sets of limits, so it's very easy to see what's going on. That's what we call stages or phases. Um, and so that's a cool feature. But let's go deeper into all of this. So now that you know it exists, you're definitely going to want to consider it. I've used it quite a bit throughout my career, but it creates a couple of situations that you're going to want to think through. And I'm going to actually save the second one for a future episode. So here's the first scenario. Your process is running at a certain level. You made a change to the process, and now you're running at a new level, almost like what we talked about in our example before. Here's the deal. I never apply two stages. I always do at least three. First stage, prior to the change. The second stage, when the change was made and the transition from one state to the next state is completed. And then finally, once I'm happy that we are at steady state, then I apply those new limits going forward. Now, you might be going, why would you do that? There are some things that will change like a light switch. As soon as you make the change, they instantaneously create higher or lower values. But most processes, for countless reasons, take a while to reach a new state. Even if it's a light switch, I still allow for that transition. Why, might you ask? Because the transition values add unrealistic variation to your limits, increasing them. They will not get the average correct. They'll either overestimate or underestimate, and it's possible the variation could be overinflated. So let's look at a very clear example. So we're going to go back to engine room. I'm going to close that out. And I've got a new data file all set up, ready to go. So again, I still have my on-time shipping data, but I've created a little bit of instability in that. So we're going to go do a control chart, and we'll do an X moving range, and we will uh, put in this, but we're not going to put in a shift. We're just going to let it do its thing. And in this particular scenario, what happened was that the organization said, we want to improve on time shipping, not let it get worse. We want to improve it. And so you can see that things have gotten better, but it's all above the center line. Well, we could actually test for that. We could say 9 points above the center line or below the center line, and it would highlight and say, yep, you've got a bunch that are above the center line, so we should create a shift for that. And that seems reasonable. And we know that that effort took place sometime in this time frame. We'll see here in a second what I discovered. So we're going to do this all again, but this time I will put in that stage variable. And so we will see what it looks like, and here it is. Now, purists among you are going, hey, Kevin, you don't have enough points here to get really great limits, and I don't disagree with you. You should always have at least 20 before you start putting your limits into concrete. By the time you get to 30, you should be good to go. But here, we made the change in November and everything looks great and it all looks stationary after November. So you probably didn't have any damage by making that assumption. This one was a light switch. Made it really easy. But sometimes our data is not quite so easy. So this time I created some data that's going to shift a little bit over time. So now I'm coming back to engine room, and this time I'm going to put in some data, and I'm just going to put in that stage data when I made the process change. And so I made the process change here, and it doesn't look too bad, right? Doesn't look too bad there. So what's the big deal, Kevin? Can't you just do that? Well, sure you can, but what actually happened was it took a few months to actually reach steady state. So I'm going to put in again my data. This time I'm going to put in 3 stages because in that initial set of data, this was kind of a transition period before we hit our new level. So you might go, well, what's the difference between 92.6 to 93.8 versus 90? Why can't you just lump that all in? Well, you could, but that's really not fair to your new process. Now, in this case, we only have 6 data points, so that doesn't qualify as being sufficient to create limits. But at this point, I believe my process is going to deliver somewhere just under 94% on time shipping, not 93.5% or 92.5%. So that's actually a big difference. And if I look at the stage difference, it estimated an overall 93.1 versus 93.8. So I will share with you, I do this for all of my process changes, even when it's not clear, to establish new limits. I'll just pick a time into the future that I go, I think everything is operating at this new state. Now I'm going to draw a line in the sand, just so I don't contaminate the limits, because all that will happen is they'll be wrong. All right? So be careful out there. The streets are messy and so is data. But remember, there's always a way.